Hey guys, I'm very excited to have another monologue for you today to have a look at. This one is from, I just noticed it on the Victorian College of the Arts audition monologues for this year. And it is the Duchess of Gloucester, her monologue that starts with, Gloucester, teach me to forget myself. Now this one is a little bit lesser known, I think, because it's from Henry VI, Part 2. Not many people have seen it because it's not very often performed, I find. But it's actually a really, really powerful, gutsy, emotional, expressive, dramatic monologue. So I highly recommend having a go at it. The language is actually not that hard, and I'm going to go into some of the challenges, but also some of the things you can do with the language to make it work for you. I'm going to talk about her character and some of the acting choices that you might want to think about for her, and I'm going to give you the context and meanings of what she's saying. Now, context is actually fairly important for this one because it's from a history play. There's a lot of stuff going on, you know, there's all kind of conspiracies and stuff happening, and you kind of need to know that background. So I'm going to try and save you a bit of time by as concisely as I possibly can telling you what's just happened before and what's really going on. Now, before I jump into breaking down the monologue for you, just a reminder that if you find this helpful, this video at all, please drop me a like or share the video or subscribe, because it really, really helps me reach more people, which makes me happy, and I think, you know, makes the world a better place if we're all enjoying and understanding Shakespeare. So let's jump in. Gloucester, teach me to forget myself. Why is she saying this? Hello, this is Gloucester's wife. One thing that you need to understand is that Gloucester is their title. It's kind of like what they're in charge of. Gloucester was the Lord Protector because Henry VI, the king, was made king when he was a baby. They kind of were like, okay, well, you be in charge. Gloucester is Henry's uncle. And so basically the Duchess of Gloucester has been swanning around like a queen this whole time because her husband, Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, has been kind of in charge of the country, essentially. So she is very proud. And Gloucester, Lord Protector, is very well received by the commoners, is well loved, is a very reasonable kind of guy. But the Duchess of Gloucester is quite uppity. She's very proud. She's referred to as being very proud. I think she costs them a lot of money in her fabulous outfits. She swans around. She doesn't talk very nicely to the commoners, all that kind of thing. So she's not kind of as loved as her husband. And she is kind of like an early Lady Macbeth in a way. So Henry VI, Part 2 is actually theoretically the first history play that was written by Shakespeare, which sounds a bit funny because it's a Part 2, but it's sort of like Star Wars in that, you know, you start here and then it goes backwards and then it goes over here and then it goes there, and then there's 1,000 different ones, and that's how the history plays all go together, but this one was the first one. So she feels a bit like Lady Macbeth in that she's like, okay, husband, you know what? I had this amazing, he's like, I had this dream where I, you know, was doing a bad job of being Lord Protector, or like I'm going to have to give up my position and stuff. And she's like, I had a dream that we were king and queen. And he's like, no, shut it down. So she's very ambitious. She's encouraging him in that kind of Lady Macbethy way. But he's not like Macbeth. He's not like, ooh, maybe I could be. He's like, oh no, whatever the king wants. Which plays out in a very interesting way because she decides, okay, she hires some people to do spells for her to raise a spirit and ask them questions about what's going to happen, like who's going to be in charge and who's going to die and all that kind of thing. And she gets caught, and that's why she's on trial during this monologue, basically, or she's come to a kind of a trial situation. And her husband is pretty useless about it. He basically, once he hears that this has happened, that she's been caught, and he wasn't even there, he just gets word and he's like, oh, well, you know, I'll just shun her, basically. Whatever the king wants. And so she's experiencing this massive betrayal. In this scene and in this monologue, she's talking to her husband. She's been brought to trial. There's a bunch of people that have been following her and like taunting her and stuff because she's been proud. They're like, ha ha, now you're in trouble. You know, they've put her in this kind of dirty sheet instead of very nice clothes and no shoes on, and they've made her walk across the like hard stones and all that, which is actually referred to in the monologue, so I'll tell you when that comes up, but it helps to know this. So she's kind of in pain, she's feeling absolutely betrayed, and then Gloucester says to her, forget this grief, which is possibly the least useful thing that someone can say to you when you're in the middle of like betrayal and heartache and shame and wondering if you're gonna die. Sorry. But yeah, this is what he says to her. And so she responds, Gloucester, teach me to forget myself. For whilst I think I am thy married wife, and thou a prince protector of this land, methinks I should not thus be led along. So she's saying in this, basically, if you want me to forget, you're gonna have to show me how to forget everything I know about myself, because I thought I was your wife and that you were a protector of England. And she said, I think I may have missed a bit. And thou a prince protector of this land, methinks I should not thus be led along. He's not actually a prince, FYI. So she says that, but she just means like a nobleman and in charge, basically. He's actually Henry's uncle. If I know this about myself, I really don't think I should be going through this experience, being led along, literally led along. Maybe think about for yourself. I think this is really important as an actor to be thinking about. What am I wearing in this situation? So maybe you're thinking that she's wearing a dirty sheet, or she's wearing horrible peasant clothes and she's all dirty, and decide for yourself. Is she bound? You know, she's got no shoes on, we know this. Is her hair all dirty? Like, I don't know for sure how long she's been captive. It would only, like, you know, in jail, it would only be max like a couple of days, because Henry says, we'll talk about this in a couple of days. Or it might just be one day. Sorry, I can't remember. But, you know, how dirty is she? How has she been treated? So build up this world for yourself, and this is what's going to make it really effective and really detailed and rich. Decide for yourself, you know, what has she been eating? Who's been talking to her? How has she been treated? Has anyone been kind to her? Has everyone been horrible? How many people are following her? She talks about a rabble following her, and I'll break that down in a second. But how many people is it? Where is where is Humphrey standing in the room, and that kind of thing. And I'll talk more about that in a second too. So let's just tie it all together. So she said, methinks I should not thus be led along, mailed up in shame with papers on my back, and followed with a rabble that rejoice to see my tears and hear my deep fet groans. So mailed up in shame basically kind of means like in the state that she's in, and potentially bound. I'm not quite sure if she's definitely bound, but basically in this state, in shame, wrapped up in shame, with papers on my back. Again, I'm so sorry, I should refresh this because I haven't done this one for a while. Papers on my back, they put, sorry, I'm going to need to check that, but I think it's to do with they put stuff on her that says what she's been accused of. I'll check that for you and I'll drop it in the comments. Sorry about that. Mailed up in shame with papers on my back, and followed with a rabble that rejoiced to see my tears. So she's referring to the common people as a rabble, which is probably, I mean, they are probably being a bit rabbly, and they're literally like yelling at her and stuff, but she is pretty proud as well. She basically thinks like the plebs, a rabble that rejoice to see my tears and hear my deep fet groans. So they're like, haha, she's crying. And deep fet, fet usually means fetched, so it just means like coming from, you know, a deep within. The ruthless flint doth cut my tender feet, and when I start, the envious people laugh and bid me be advised how I tread. So she's barefoot, ruthless flint doth cut my tender feet. So she's walking along barefoot, and she's going, ow, ow, ow. And when I start, it means more like startled. It doesn't mean like when I begin. It means like when I start, like when I jump, like, ow, my foot. The envious people laugh. Interesting that she uses the word envious. I think this is one of those typical Shakespeare things where he's kind of layering on the double meaning to it. Envious in that she thinks they envy her for sure, because she is quite proud, but also at this point she may be envying them, their freedom, and yeah, their freedom pretty much. The envious people laugh and bid me be advised how I tread. That basically means, bid me be advised how I tread means that they're going like, watch out where you step, ha 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 ha, basically, like just being sarcastic with her. So that's kind of the first chunk of the monologue. And what you need to know now is like, there's a bit of a shift next, because she says, Ah, Humphrey, can I bear this shameful yoke? She's saying Humphrey. Humphrey is the Duke of Gloucester, so it's his personal name, not his title, which means very likely that she's speaking to him in a very personal way. She at this point is connecting to him as a husband. What I want you to think about definitely at this point, well, you should anyway, but at this point you're going to need to be really clear about where is Humphrey in the room. If you are taping, if you're doing a tape for a submission, just make sure that he's not too far away, because it looks really poor. You may already know this kind of taping etiquette, but it looks really poor if you're ending up in profile and going, Humphrey, blah, 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 blah. You need to have fairly close to the camera. Think about your eye line being fairly close to, like, just point past wherever your camera is. And it can be a bit more personal. And this is where she's really maybe being a bit more vulnerable. To begin with, I think there's the betrayal, the confusion, the objection, and it's probably still a fair amount of pride. And now it's really like, the breakdown is really starting to happen, and this is very personal and very raw and vulnerable. Can I bear this shameful yoke? So she's referring to the yoke being like what, like the burden of an ox. So she's kind of saying like, can I get through this? Can I bear this? Like the shame is actually her burden, the burden of shame. Can I actually walk through life feeling this shame on me? Can I bear the shameful yoke? Trowest thou that e'er I'll look upon the world, or count them happy that enjoy the sun. Trowest thou means do you think, and don't make it trowest, by the way. Just if you ever have a apostrophe st, it should be, the idea is that it's contracting, so don't make it into two syllables. Trowest thou, that's not helpful. You always want that flow. Trowest thou that e'er I'll look upon the world, or count them happy that enjoy the sun. Now this is an interesting one. What she's saying is, do you think I'm ever going to look on the world again? Like, am I going to be, and because she's being banished basically. It's an interesting one, because you could play it that she's actually really asking Humphrey, like, do you think I'm ever going to be able to like go outside again and have my freedom again? And maybe making an appeal for him to maybe change the verdict about her, because he does actually kind of say, like, if you've been charged as guilty, I can't do anything. This could be a moment where she kind of appeals to him, but also the way that I actually tend to play it is more like a rhetorical, do you ever think that I'm actually going to look on people again and be like, yay for you outside, and I'm going to go out in the world and be a person again? No. And that's what she starts to say, no. So I actually think she's probably made the decision. That's usually the way that I play it, but you could make it as like a moment where you're going like, oh, Humphrey, maybe, and then just make the decision, and when you see his reaction, and then say no. I hope that makes sense. Please drop me a comment if that doesn't make sense. No, dark shall be my light and night my day. I personally think in this moment, because she's been talking about I'd rather die, but she's going to the Isle of Man, so she's being banished. She's basically saying, nah, I'm just going to hole up in a house. If I'm not going to die, then I'm just going to hole up and like hide and just pretend like I'm in the dark and just, hide myself away. Dark shall be my light and night my day. To think upon my pomp shall be my hell. So I'm going to create my own darkness. I'm going to hide away, and I'll only go out at night. And thinking about my pomp being like my glory days as a pretend queen shall be my hell. That's hell for me to think about that. So I'll be just, it's interesting that I think that's another thing to think about for you. So there's a lot of choices that you can make in this monologue. You could play this as like, when I think about it, it's going to be so painful that I just won't even think about it. Or you could play it as that she's actually going to kind of put herself through that purgatory of like, actually, I'm going to think about it all the time, and it's going to be awful because that's going to be my life and I'm choosing it, kind of thing. So there's a lot of choices to be made. To think about my pomp shall be my hell. Sorry, make sure I find my place. Sometime I'll say, here we go. And this is why I think it's interesting to play like, actually, I'm going to be thinking about my hell all the time, because then she says, sometime I'll say, I am Duke Humphrey's wife. It's interesting that she says I am and not I was. I am Duke Humphrey's wife, and he a prince and ruler of the land. Yet so he ruled, and such a prince he was, as he stood by, whilst I, his forlorn duchess, was made a wonder and a pointing stock to every idle rascal follower. So I hope that's fairly self-explanatory, that bit. So she's saying, like, you know, one day, I kind of think she's imagining, like, one day I'm going to be chatting to some random person that's like, what are you doing here? And I'm going to be like, you know what? I am Duke Humphrey's wife, and he was the protector of this whole kingdom. Yet he was such a rubbish protector that he did nothing, while his wife, his poor, like, forlorn duchess is just like poor wife. And it's interesting, she refers a lot to titles. Titles are important to her. She doesn't say, like, his poor wife. She says forlorn duchess, his partner, but his queen. Was made a wonder and a pointing stock, so literally, like, ha 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 ha, to every idle rascal follower. So again, she's referring to the plebs. She's pretty rough about it. So she is a really proud character. She's not necessarily a likable character, but her sense of betrayal and grief and shame is real. So she's a flawed character, which is great. But be thou mild and blush not at my shame, nor stir at nothing till the axe of death hang over thee, as sure it shortly will. So that's basically like, you know, she's just said, like, well, Humphrey does nothing. He did nothing to help me. Thanks a lot, husband. And then she's basically like, be thou mild and blush not at my shame. Is like, because he's kind of like, well, you know, whatever the king wants. That's basically what she's referring to. Well, you stand there and don't even worry about it. And nor stir at nothing means, like, do nothing about it till the axe of death hang over thee, as sure it shortly will. This is because she knows that everything at the moment, everyone's conspiring, because it's the king's just got married, and the new wife is like, I don't understand why you have a Lord Protector anymore, and why do you have these people doing this, and why is that? And so all the, like, the little, you know, the noblemen are like, let's get rid of Gloucester and let's do this, and I'll be in charge, and I want France, and all those things. So she's basically like saying, you know what, you got nothing, you don't have much time left. And I think that's really interesting, a really interesting thing to play. I personally wouldn't play it too sulky, because you could kind of go like, well, you know, don't do anything then, or whatever. But I think it's more interesting to play it with power, to just be like, you know what, you do whatever you like, because you are going to die soon, and I know it, and you better face it too. And coming from that power is much more interesting. There's a little bit more to the monologue, but it's often not included, because she starts to say, for Suffolk, he that can do all in all with her that hateth thee and hates us all, that's the new wife, and York and Impious, sorry, she's basically the next bit, which I'm not going to go into because barely anyone ever performs that bit, and if I were you, I'm pretty sure in the audition monologues you don't include it. It's basically she's just listing all the people being like, well, because of so-and-so is going to do this and so-and-so is going to do that, you know, this is going to get stuffed up. It's rarely performed, that bit. And fly thou how thou canst, they'll tangle thee. So basically you're not going to be able to get away from it, is the end bit there. So what I'll do now, which I don't usually do, I'm going to actually read through the whole lot. It's not a performance, but it's going to give you a little bit of an idea of how it might all go together. And please drop me a comment if you've got any questions again, or if there are any other monologues you'd like me to do. And remember, if it's been helpful, please do share it with someone. Let's have a read through together. So that's before we start, just thinking out in our heads, where are we? And he's just said, Eleanor, just forget about it. You know, don't forget this grief. Gloucester, teach me to forget myself. For whilst I think I am thy married wife, and thou a prince, protector of this land, methinks I should not thus be led along, mailed up in shame with papers on my back, and followed with a rabble that rejoice to see my tears and hear my deep fet groans. The ruthless flint hath cut my tender feet, and when I start, the envious people laugh and bid me be advised how I tread. Humphrey, can I bear this shameful yoke? Trust thou that e'er I'll look upon the world, or count them happy that enjoy the sun? No, Dark shall be my light, and night my day. To think upon my pomp shall be my hell. Sometime I'll say, I am Duke Humphrey's wife, and he a prince and ruler of the land. Yet so he ruled, and such a prince he was, as he stood by, whilst I, his forlorn duchess, was made a wonder and a pointing stock to every idle rascal follower. Be thou mild, and blush not at my shame, nor stare at nothing till the axe of death hang over thee, as sure as shortly will. So there's my little imperfect reading of that. I hope it helps a bit of an idea of flow, of highs and lows, and putting it all together. Obviously, you do not have to perform it like I did, but you'll notice that there's a lot there that needs to flow together. It's actually quite neat. There's lots of room to take breaths at the end of lines, and some clear moments that are sort of bigger and smaller, clear beats that you might want to decide for yourself, but we've also kind of mapped them out together. And I hope that's helpful. Oh my goodness, what a big one, but it's so rewarding. I hope you give it a go and let me know if you do, and let me know if there's any other monologues you'd like me to look at. I'll see you next time. Bye.